Well, I saw the house in 2011 when Arkansas State University had just purchased it. And it was inconceivable that it could look as it does today. We were very worried that the house would be on the ground before Dr. Hawkins' team could get to it. So to see the progress, I've seen it 2 or 3 times, and the progress has been really startling. Today was a revelation. To see all of the rooms completely restored as they were to the most meticulous historic detail, because my Aunt Joanne and Uncle Tom have such great memories, and they remembered everything down to the kind of pots and pans, to the curtains, to the linoleum on the floor. Some of the original pieces were found and are in the house, which gives it even more resonance and beauty, and it's like time travel. And I was telling Ruth today that if my dad could walk into that house today, I think he would be so overcome with the feeling of going back in time and to see his deepest memories preserved forever now, and for other people to see how they lived and what influenced him so profoundly. It's, I just never expected anything like this, and I have to give it up to Ruth and the team for what they've done.
Thanks.
Questions from the media?
Ms. Cash, can you talk a little about the influence this project has had on you? And you talk a lot about the South End, Dyess, and your latest album.
Well, this whole project has caused an immense shift in my own life. As you can imagine, I get a lot of requests to participate in Johnny Cash projects that come across my desk on a weekly basis, and I say no to virtually all of them. Well, when Arkansas State University approached the family about getting involved, immediately I said yes. I was just flooded with this excitement about it and this knowledge that this was the right thing, that this was something my dad, it would have meant more to him than anything else, and that my children needed to know that 2 generations back we were cotton farmers, that this is where we came from. So the first trip down here for the first fundraiser that we arranged to restore the home to raise funds, Marshall Grant, who was my dad's original bass player in the Tennessee 2, was there. He came to rehearsal that day. He played his big upright bass guitar, and he had a brain aneurysm that night. So on the last conscious day of his life, he played the bass guitar for this project. Well, I'm a songwriter, and there was no way to avoid the song that was inside that experience. That coupled to coming out here to see the house for the first time, and I was really moved by how hard my grandmother's life was. And I just thought about her raising 7 kids, picking cotton, cooking at the end of the day, starting out with no electricity or plumbing, and realized that a modern woman as myself, I could not have done that. But there was something steely in her that we inherited. So that, there was a song in that for me too, and I wrote with my husband, I wrote The Sunken Lands, about the sunken lands of Arkansas and about her. Those 2 songs, Etta's tune about Marshall and Etta Grant, The Sunken Lands about this, opened up a whole album called The River and the Thread. We took a lot of trips through the Delta when we were writing these songs, and it's been a life-changing experience. I've never had songwriting experiences like that, and the things that I thought were anecdotal in my life, the fact that I was born in Memphis, the fact that my father came from here, my grandparents were cotton farmers, I thought those were just facts strung along in my life. They are actually the things that I've carried with me my whole life and have informed me as a musician, as a wife and mother.
Dr. Hawkins, can you talk a little about what were the key challenges in restoring the house, bringing it back to what it is today?
Well, obviously the key challenge was the fact that this is gumbo soil. And that means it rolls, it moves, it shifts. And if you look around town, you see a lot of houses that are unlevel because of that. And that's what had happened to the Cash home. It literally had sunk into the ground in the sunken lands. And because those concrete pillars that it sits on, the piers rather, they'd turned and they'd sunk, and so there was a lot of rot, you know, the wood sills and so forth. So we had to move it off of its foundation, dig a pit 8 feet deep and dig out all that gumbo soil and then fill it with better draining soil. And then we dug a trench around it, 2 feet wide around it, and poured concrete and created that as a base and put dirt over it so that you couldn't see it. So those concrete piers are now sitting on that concrete foundation that you don't see. So literally, most of our money went into the ground.
You cannot believe what this woman did. It's epic.
Rosanne, what memories do you have? I know, of course, you know, you were living in Memphis when you were born and the family was, but what memories do you have of this area?
I remember my father bringing us back here. I must have been 12 the first time he brought us back. There were still enormous trees around the house, which Dr. Hawkins has replanted, those cottonwoods, and someday they'll be enormous again. And the house was boarded up. There was no one here. And I remember my dad walking around the house looking in every window. And there was a sense of loss, sense of heaviness of heart that first time. And as a preteen child, I was aware of it, but I didn't quite understand it. And then, you know, to really begin to realize how deep the loss of his brother Jack affected him, how profound that loss was for the whole family, and how it informed a lot of his later work. That was something I became aware of as a preteen. And then, of course, all the songs about the soil, you know, it's all started to make sense my first visit.
Ruth, talk about, now that you've allowed all of the family to come through, what does it mean to you now? You've seen their reaction. How does it make you feel?
Well, I think that at every step of the way in this project, what we were aiming for was authenticity. We really wanted to get it right. And we're very fortunate that we did have 2 people that were born and raised in that house, Joanne and Tommy. And so they were great consultants on the project. They described every stick of furniture in the house, and we tried to be true to that. And so we were really anxious for all the family to come and see that and see if we had captured that. And it was really gratifying to see the reactions, because as they picked up pictures of the family and that were on the piano, and I mean, I think it looks like the Cash family just stepped out of the house to go to church.
Yeah. I just had an experience an hour ago of taking 3 of my 5 children into my dad's childhood bedroom. And the 4 of us stood there and wept. It was the oddest sensation of thinking of my dad as a little boy in that very spot, and what if he could have seen his middle-aged daughter and 3 of his grandchildren walk in that room. How would he have felt? Could he even conceive it? It was too much. It was the most overwhelming sense, and so beautiful.
In that way, it's a personal connection for you, but for the people that have, you know, known him through his music, they'll now be able to walk in there. What do you think that means to them?
Well, I think it'll inform their understanding of him a lot more, and to see where those songs came from, Pickin' Time, 5 Feet High and Rising, you know, they're real. These are not just imaginary events. These are real things that came from this spot on Earth. And, you know, even before the house was restored, there were buses of tourists who would find their way there. So I think that it will be, do you know the thing that's so great about it is it's not kitschy. It's not like there are souvenirs everywhere. This is a real thing. And it's very powerful because of its authenticity.
When you walked in today, is there one part of the house that caught your attention and just took your breath away?
My dad's bedroom. That was very sweet to see where he had laid next to his brother Jack with 2 more siblings in the next bed right next to them. And but the whole thing was overwhelming. The sack of flour in the kitchen and the newspaper from 1947 on the armchair. Those details made it come alive.
And finally, what do y'all hope becomes of this, that visitors who come here take away from this?
Well, you know, I hope that when visitors see this, they will get a sense of who this man was and how it did impact his music. I really think it's obvious that all of the values that come across in his music, the love of family, the love of community, his concern for fellow man, all those things that come out in his music, I think it's clear that they were shaped and informed, those values were formed right here in Dyess, Arkansas.
And the work ethic.
Work ethic, absolutely.
And one thing we can't forget is to take it out of, to keep it in context, which is that this was part of a New Deal program. And the New Deal saved the Cash family. There were 500 desperately poor families who were saved by this colony. The Cash family is one of them. And I think as Americans, it's important for us to know about the New Deal. It's relatively recent in our history so that we're not paying much attention to it, and this colony being restored will draw attention to that part of our history. It's very important.
And I hope maybe you've had a chance while you were waiting to look at the exhibits downstairs. If you haven't, I hope you'll go down and look at those exhibits, because they do tell the story of the Dyess colony and put the story of the Cash family into context.
And didn't Eleanor Roosevelt visit this colony?
Yes, and there's an exhibit on Eleanor Roosevelt. She stood on these front steps right here and dedicated this colony in 1936.
Dad always talked about remembering seeing her as she went by, how exciting that was.
Ruth, isn't that one of the great ironies of this project, that here's a slice of the New Deal that would have disappeared absent Johnny Cash?
That's right.
Johnny Cash wouldn't have been made absent this program of the New Deal.
You've said it very well.
That's great. I like that. We need to use that.
Anything else? Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you very much for coming out today.